Squirrel White and James Pearce named freakiest athletes on Bruce Feldman's list that he comes out with each and every year. Pearce, not a surprise at all. He has been compared to Leonard Little by a guy that played with Leonard Little, Fred White. So we're going to go ahead and say he absolutely should be on that list, no question. Squirrel White is just a little ball of muscle, and he can do things that guys his size can't do. So I understand them both being on the list. Before we get to how they compare with the all-time Tennessee freak athletes, Caleb, was there anybody on that list of note or any surprise or any Vol that was left off the list that you might put on there? I feel like this is becoming the Elijah Simmons show, but if he were healthy, Elijah Simmons would be on this list.
Oh, I could see Elijah Simmons if he were healthy being on this list. I believe, because you turn it to the Elijah Simmons show and I turn it to the Mike Matthews show. I think after playing for a year, Mike Matthews will be on this list. I think Mike Matthews is the rarest freaky athlete that Tennessee's ever had at receiver.
Okay. We'll see. We'll see. That's pretty freaky. I can never remember the one guy's name that an NFL scout told me had incredible talent. He was a long, lanky kid, played in the mid-2000s. I've been trying to think of his name for over months that I wanted to compare him to. Maybe I'll come up with at some point, or maybe I'm just...
That's crazy.
All right, let's get to 4 downs now. Coop, what should people do?
Cooper Mays here. Hit like and subscribe.
All right, first down, Coop.
Coop here. First down.
All right. James Pearce, Squirrel White. How do they compare to the all-time great freaky athletes? Leonard Little, that's who we just mentioned. James Pearce compares very well to him because Fred White said so, basically. I would trust his eyes more than mine. So that's a heck of a comparison because Leonard Little was one of the greatest athletes that came through Tennessee at their one of the greatest high points in their history.
James Pearce may be better as an athlete. Now here's where it's a little tricky. I think Leonard Little was better at stopping the run. Would you agree on that? Was a better run stopper than James Pearce?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I was going to point out upper body strength. I think would go. I think would be Little.
But you saw. But here's the other part. James Pearce is agile enough to drop back in coverage.
Mm-hmm.
Leonard Little, you talk about it all the time. When they put him at middle linebacker, wasn't that the problem? He was horrible dropping back in coverage.
Yes, that was a terrible idea.
Yeah. Leonard Little's not getting that pick six that James Pearce got last year against Iowa and outrunning everybody to the house. Now, okay, I take that back. Maybe he is outrunning Iowa players. Okay. But I don't know if he would, but James Pearce would have he'd outrun Georgia players if he got that pick six. See how cleared he was of everybody? And he clocked in at 23 miles an hour at his peak. I don't think Leonard Little's able to, I don't think he can clock in 23 miles an hour speed.
Usain Bolt wouldn't have caught him. I mean, Usain Bolt.
He was?
Yeah. Usain Bolt, I don't know that he would have caught him with the lead he had. No, but point is nobody was going to catch him. What down, Coop?
Cooper Mays here. Second down.
Okay, now we're going to go back in history. So maybe the young ones out there can learn a little bit. Doug Atkins. I'm sorry. No offense to James Pearce or Squirrel White, but a guy that was a freak of nature in his time, Doug Atkins is number one to me in Tennessee history. So I got to give it to Doug Atkins. He jumped over offensive linemen. He was 240, which was big at the time, but was very athletic. Doug Atkins, to me, is the number one overall freak athlete in Tennessee history.
And let's be fair here. All athletics is relative. And what we mean by that is that all athletes today are better than all athletes in the 50s. The question is, how much better than your peers were you? How much more did you stand up? Yeah. So, for instance, just you brought up Usain Bolt. Usain Bolt's faster than Jesse Owens. Jesse Owens is greater than Usain Bolt because Jesse Owens dominated the field in the 30s the way nobody has ever dominated track and field in the Olympics since then. So
Doug Atkins dominated. What you're saying is Doug Atkins dominated SEC offensive linemen when he played like no one else.
Like no one else. Relative to his competition, Doug Atkins was the most physical freak maybe in football history. And I mean in the NFL too. And I mean, I've learned a lot about him over the years. You're right. He was the when you talk about freakishly athletic players by today's standards in the SEC, Doug Atkins may have been the first to be that.
Did I ever tell you he was my favorite interview I think I ever did?
Oh yeah, you told me about how he was very un-PC.
Yeah, you had to clean up a lot of curse words and maybe some racial things, but when you cleaned it up, it was a good interview. And he was an older guy, so I kind of gave him a pass on the racial issues, which typically I would just ended the interview. It wasn't anything bad.
Tennessee Center.
My understanding is, yeah, it depends on the context and what you mean by it. Like, I have family members that are no longer with me anymore that said some stuff that they never meant anything by it. You know what I mean? So it's like,
we had a guy that you would know that played basketball for Tennessee, and he used the term Afro-Americans one time. He was just older. He didn't mean anything by it, but that's not Afro-Americans. It's not the right phrase.
Here's my question before we move on. Should we be, because John Adams a lot lays into him, since we're saying this, should we be fair to Philip Fulmer as athletic director when he said I consulted with the girls about hiring Kelly Harper? Or should he have known better given his age?
He should have known better. Reggie White. Now, we don't talk about him as a great physical freak athlete, but Caleb and I at the 3:45 a.m. production meeting, we were discussing that. And I'm like, how many guys do I know that are 280 that could take Larry Allen, who, for those that don't know, is the best offensive lineman to ever play football? Larry Allen is. No question. Sorry, Caleb. That's the one I'm going to stick by.
I'm with you. He made Emmitt Smith. There's no Emmitt Smith without Larry Allen.
But at one point, Reggie White, with one arm, took Larry Allen and threw him to the side. A guy that could bench 600 pounds. So that's a freak athlete. We don't talk about Reggie White being a freak athlete, but I would put him right up there, if not higher. And I'd have to put him higher than Pearce because of his size. Squirrel White. At defensive end, you're going to have a bigger impact in the game, so I'd have to go White in this regard.
So which White are you taking?
I go Reggie.
Who's the better White?
I go Reggie.
Okay, all right. I think that I got to go with you on that. And again, this is relative to competition. Reggie White, basically, for those who... When John Henderson was at Tennessee in 2001, we thought it was so freakish that a guy that size could rack up that many sacks, right? It wasn't that common for a defensive tackle to get 12 sacks in a year. And he did it, which was insane. Yes. Guys, Reggie White played defensive tackle in college, and he got 15 sacks in a year. And you don't get that from a defensive tackle. Then he goes to the NFL and becomes a defensive end. I mean, Reggie White was an incredible athlete. Yeah, I have him over James Pearce as an athlete.
Okay. What receiver in Tennessee history, or what receivers would you have ranked over Squirrel White in terms of just freak athlete portions of the program? Brought to you by Medicare Misty.
19 years this year. I've been in the community since 1993. You're getting a lot of information. Unlike when you were working, they made the choice for you. Now you have to make the choice. Come to us and let us help you make it easy. Call Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com or 423-777-5577. Let us help them sleep at night.
And we call her Medicare Misty.
She does not charge for her services, registered in over 40 states. So Medicare Misty, MedicareMisty.com. Caleb, fourth down is this.
All SEC center Cooper Mays here. Fourth down.
All right, name a freakier athlete than Squirrel White at receiver. And I want to open that up to the message board too, and I'll dial right in.
I think Carl Pickens is a pretty obvious choice. I think Carl Pickens was a freaky athlete. And honestly, I think Carl Pickens' NFL career wasn't as good as it could have been because I think he was a bit of a diva.
A bit. I mean, that's maybe the nicest thing you've ever said about a person. Yes, he was a diva, and he would have had a Hall of Fame career had he not had the bit of an attitude. He ended up bouncing around. He was tough to get along with. Did I ever tell you about my one Carl Pickens story?
You did not. I need to hear this one.
What year did he play for the Titans? Do you remember?
Oh, 2000. I will never forget that. We had him and then we cut him the next year.
Okay, so they sent me to Nashville to cover a Titans practice because Carl Pickens was there. So I went up there and I'm interviewing Carl Pickens. And so at the time, I'm probably 26, 27. So this is an NFL locker room. This is a big deal, right? And he's the only person in the history of my life that took the microphone from me and commenced to doing the interview himself. He said, "You seem a little nervous," and just took it from me and did it. It was funny, but it was kind of diva jerky-ish too.
It was.
Kind of taking advantage of a young that was in over his head at the time. That was me.
Wait, it's even funnier. I didn't know this. You may know this, Dave. I just looked him up. Did you know that the Bengals had a Carl Pickens clause that they invented?
No. What is a clause?
There was when he signed his contract, they put a loyalty clause in there that basically said he would forfeit all of his signing bonus if he insulted the organization in public. I've never heard of that. That's as bad as the Kyler Murray video game clause.
No, that is that's really bad. And go ahead.
What about? And I've also heard that. So he was he was Chad Johnson before Chad Johnson, and funny enough, they both played for the Bengals. I've also heard that because of that, he wasn't always as committed to maximizing his potential the way he should have been. Is that fair to say? Which is why his career ended in 2001 and not 2007 with Hall of Fame numbers.
With the right attitude, he has a golden jacket. There's no question.
Yeah, I think so too. And the problem people don't understand is when you're in your prime and you're a rare athlete like he was in the 90s, they'll put up with a bad attitude, right? When you're that talented. But the minute you slip a little bit, you talk about the 50-50, 60-40 thing. If you become a receiver that goes from just a rare talent to like, okay, you could still make it in the NFL, but you have an attitude issue, then it's easy to find another receiver to replace them.
As far as freaky receivers, who else would even be on that list?
So we talked in the morning, and I thought Kelly Washington, but you accurately brought up that he was a grown man's body playing among 18-year-olds at that point, and so it's a little bit different. I thought Dante Stallworth was pretty freakishly athletic on the other side.
Yep, I can roll with that.
Honestly, I will never forget all the talk was about Washington being such a rare talent. I will never forget the second half of that 2001 season thing. And you know what? Dante Stallworth may actually be better than Washington. And I know that was crazy to say at the time.
Yeah, and you're comparing two different people that bodies had changed tremendously. I mean, Kelly Washington had been in a minor league baseball program working out his body, and Dante Stallworth was also younger. Correct me if I'm wrong, but Kelly Washington was 22 when he showed up on campus.
He was.
And so, I mean, yeah, my body changed tremendously from 18 to 22.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. In terms of speed, you brought up, would you say like a guy like Alvin Harper was a freaky athlete?
Yes. And, we didn't include some of the guys that ran track, and if we want to say Leonard Scott was a freaky athlete, I know he dropped a lot of balls, but he did get open a lot on the football field, and he was one of the fastest men on the face of the earth.
Yes, but with Leonard Scott, we're going from freaky athlete to just athlete. Like Leonard Scott was just an athlete in terms of how fast. Freaky, I think, like you have a unique blend of size. If
Leonard Scott's 6'4", then
yes.
Okay, I see.
If Leonard Scott's 6'4", he doesn't have to have hands. He'll make it work in the NFL.